And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. Today is March 18th, Friday. So we have a lot of topics to cover. So without further ado, so first foremost, regarding Ford's plan to sell their vehicles at an incomplete state in a sense because of the chip shortage, as you may have noticed, it's still being felt even if we're 2 years removed from the pandemic when it started 2 years back. Now, is this a good strategy even though the car is functioning on itself or by itself? You can use it, but without that small chip that manages some key aspects of the vehicle. Now, will customers still continue to buy it, and will there be a severe repercussion in terms of backlash from their key customers here? Now, obviously, company has to continue produce and sell their vehicles, especially if you make vehicles at a yearly basis. So we'll talk about that. Next, we'll be talking another company, for all of its tremendous effort to offer a tremendous product, especially in technology, smartphones and whatnot. Apple still offer, somewhat, not so superior experience in a sense, especially in the smartphone or even, in the laptop scene, especially, if they offer you a device, electronic device at that you should get ample performance as well as storage here, and in particular, you know 64 gig may seem a large amount of storage, but in current times in 2022, that a small amount, that amount of storage can easily be filled up. And based on my personal experience, one tend to shoot a lot of photos and videos and it accumulates quickly. So how come Apple is still offering this just to be able to sell or tell the public that they're offering an affordable version of the base, which no one would even consider buying, and they should be ashamed of offering it in the first place? The fact that they're offering premium products is, it's kind of counterintuitive. But anyway, we'll dive deeper into that as to their rationale. Third is we'll be talking about an airline company, Comair, whose fleet of airlines has been grounded indefinitely. Now, obviously, the airline industry has been hampered with travel restrictions going back with the lockdown way back in 2020. But the question is this related or is this totally different reasoning as to why they're shutting down indefinitely? And next is something on the gaming side. If you a gamer here, you might be interested to know that Elden Ring, despite being only launched less than a month, is considered one of the best-selling games of the current year of 2022, which is kind of surprising if you think about the games that was launched last year and even early this year, and it pales in comparison. So we'll dive into that as well. And lastly, we'll be talking about some local news with regards to, the city of Metro Manila is planning to go to alert level 0. Now, is this a good strategy with regards to, if, for businesses? Obviously, this is a big reprieve in a sense that, some are still trying to recover from the past year or two from the pandemic or the current situation, and you're just adjusting to the new normal here. But on the flip side here, are we moving too fast if we're going to go to alert level 0? Now, right now, we're on alert level 1, so people can now move freely to and from with minimal restrictions here. So we'll talk about that as well. Anyway, so to start off, as mentioned, Ford, a big manufacturing automotive company, sells a lot of vehicles, right? In particular, one of their best-selling vehicles, an SUV. Sad to say, if you're going to plan the latest one, you're going to be missing some chips here. Now, obviously, the chips that they use it obviously doesn't power up the vehicle, but there are some key components that uses their technology to make it safe and efficient here. The question here is, would people still accept the car on its current condition even though it's missing the chip? So let's take a closer look. All right, there you go. So according to TheVerge.com, it mentions here that the vehicles will come without rear heating and air conditioning controls. Now, for some it may not be a big issue, but obviously if you're in live in a region where it's very cold or very hot, obviously you want environmental control to manage those, otherwise it would be a terrible experience, which is kind of the point of the matter. If you cannot sell a complete car, why sell it in the first place? Now, obviously the main issue for the car manufacturer Ford here, that the vehicle has been, has been constructed, have been finished already. It's only missing the key component, which is the chips that we were just talking about here. So let's read further. Anyway, it goes on to say Ford will soon start selling and shipping some Ford Explorers without the chips that power rear air conditioning and heating controls. So that's not a good sign if you're planning to buy a new Ford SUV here. What the automaker will do instead is ship the missing semiconductors to dealers within 1 year, which they will then install in customers' vehicles after purchase, which is a nice idea. So while waiting for that, but the question is, what if something were to go wrong with the vehicle? Will that be covered under warranty? And if something severe were to happen because of the missing chips here, who will be held accountable here? Will the car manufacturer be? That's a very dangerous slope that, obviously the decision makers at Ford has already, decided that, they need to sell those vehicles rather than let it idle in their warehouses as we speak. Anyway, a Ford spokesperson said that the heating and air conditioning will still be controllable from the front seats, and that customers who choose to purchase a vehicle without the real controls will receive a price reduction. And goes on to mention that Ford is doing this as a way to bring new Explorers to customers faster, and that the change is only temporary. But I don't know. If you're selling a product, if it's not finished, then why offer it? And if you're a customer, obviously you should be wise enough to understand that if it's not a finished product, then why would I buy it in the first place here? Similar to the gaming industry, where gaming publishers, like CD Projekt Red, releasing a flawed game, an incomplete game, and then promising that they're going to do the bug fixes in the game later that year. But obviously if it's not a finished product, then you shouldn't be allowed to offer it in the market. And the debacle that happened with Cyberpunk, and remember, going before that, you have Bethesda's releasing the terrible Fallout 76. So whether it's in the gaming industry or in the automotive, now obviously this one, it's somewhat a slighter inconvenience, but the fact of the matter is it's still not a complete vehicle here. And obviously you can always look for an alternative model or a different car maker that has the complete set already, rather than we're going to ship it to you later, or you can go to the nearest dealer and get it installed here, right? Anyway, it mentions also the automaker originally had planned to ship partially built, which is even concerning, undrivable vehicles to dealers last year. So they were already in a time crunch regarding to, having to sell those vehicles. Otherwise, they would be stuck in the warehouses and that would depreciate. And obviously, they have to produce another set of new vehicles as the following year approaches here. And then they mentioned unshipped vehicles will be both drivable and sellable. And but the Ford's decision comes as an attempt to move the partially built vehicles, crowding its factory lot. Obviously, the capacity for holding that many vehicles, you can only hold it up to a certain point before you have nowhere place to put it. Either you sell it or you throw it out, which is obviously you don't want to do that. Anyway, hundreds of new Ford Broncos were spotted sitting idly in the snow-covered lots of Ford's Michigan assembly plant. Now, obviously, the main concern that if it's idling, especially in public, not in public place, but in open spaces, the car will deteriorate eventually, right? I mean, the value of it will significantly hamper it, and items could be breaking, especially if it's exposed and not being used properly or maintained properly here. Like many other companies. So obviously one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world, Ford has been grappling with the constraint introduced by the chip shortage. So it's not just in the computer segment, PC segment, as well as in the gaming industry or the processors or in the GPU segment, which as our previous discussion mentioned, that the prices are still exorbitant high, especially if you're buying compared to the MSRP, going to third party or aftermarket or second-hand retailers here. So this has already spilled over to many industries that rely on chips as their source of control for their devices, in particular to vehicles as such here. So it mentions that after the lack of semiconductors, many companies like Ford has to scale back their productions regarding the F-150, which is a very popular SUV in the United States. It mentions that it started giving customers options to purchase the pickup without the automatic start stop. Now, if I'm a loyal customer that purchases Ford, then why would I buy something that's not complete? And I think that's I know I understand the dilemma of the company. It's not their fault, but obviously overproduction, and if it's not available, then don't make it in the first place. It's not as if they didn't know that it was going to happen, that the shortage was going to hamper the availability of the chips. Even big companies like Apple were forced to readjust or temper their expectations, even though there's demand for their products. But if the products are not able to be produced in a timely manner, then it won't make sense, right? Now, obviously, that can affect your bottom line in the long run. So, obviously, Ford company or executives have weighed the decision here, hoping that customer will still consider buying their vehicles regardless of the situation here. Now, it goes on to mention that other automakers have also made sacrifices due to the chip shortage. You have GM dropping wireless charging, HD radios, fuel management module that made some pickup trucks operate more efficiently. You also have Tesla, sold some cars without USB ports and made them installable at a again, it goes to my point. That's why, I'm very apprehensive on upgrading a vehicle with too much technology here, because with, situations like this, that they're now reliant on technology compared to a traditional one. And if there's a missing component, your car is unsellable if you think about it. So, it's not just, entry level vehicles, mass market vehicles, or even high end vehicles. They're in the same boat. And obviously, especially if it's a luxury vehicle, like Tesla vehicles, if there's a missing component, why would you pay thousands, tens of thousands, 50,000 or hundreds of thousands worth of vehicle that's incomplete in terms of its features here? Not to say the least that it's not as if their software is foolproof, but that's another discussion here. So question is, would you as a customer buy their vehicle knowing that it's incomplete? Well, for my case here, I would rather wait until it's completed or look for an alternative. Obviously, there are a lot of car manufacturers that I'm sure would offer a better experience, a complete set of features, not to worry about that you have to install it later on and so forth. Anyway, so for our next topic, yeah, so again, issues with companies that's trying to, I won't say skimp on the features, but offering a base model just to say that they're offering at a very affordable price. But the fact that you're trying to sell a lot of units and peg yourself as a premium product, like Apple here, which doesn't make sense if they're offering a very subpar feature here with this case. So according to AndroidAuthority.com, Apple is still offering a 64 gigabyte storage for their smartphones, which is, if you think about it, it's not practical anymore, especially in our current time frame, current age, that people are consuming a lot of content, downloading a lot of content, and then taking photos and videos, just like myself, and it eats up a lot of memory. Now, obviously, for my case, that's a span of 5 years, and before I upgraded to my S22 Ultra, which has 256 gigabytes of storage. I think before that it had 128 storage, and in 5 years I was able to almost fill that storage to the brim. So considering a 64 gig, and the fact that there's no option for you to expand the memory, which is another issue that Apple knew going in. If they were to offer an expandable slot like Android devices, Samsung and other brands, I think it would have been an issue here, similar to how the Steam Deck is offering, right? A paltry, I think, is it 64 gigabytes? Let me see here. Steam Deck models. Hey, looking at Steam. Stream Deck, no, not Steam Decks. Okay. Yeah, so the Steam Decks has three models, the 64 gigabyte. Now, obviously for games nowadays, especially for the latest AAA games, offers, let me show here. So you can see here that 64 gigabytes of only eMMC storage compared to 256 NVMe SSD, which is supposed to be faster storage, but based on the reviews, it depends on the game. And then you have the most expensive that can spend in the north of 600 to 30,000 pesos of 512 storage. And the interesting here is it's expandable. So you can insert the micro SD card and expand it, which makes sense. But for the case of for Apple, you're only stuck with that, and obviously they want you to buy the bigger storage and spend more, which is, if that's the case here, then why not offer the let's say at least 128 gig. Imagine that if they were to offer that in their laptops, I think people would call on for pitchforks and call on for Tim Cook for offering such a a terrible feature that obviously people would not even consider buying it, because 128 gigs of storage for a laptop is just installing the OS in itself and then some apps. Then how are you going to save on data in your computers there? Same goes for smartphones here. Obviously it's not the same level. That's why 64 gig is not acceptable. 128 is the starting point. Then you offer 256, 512, and then you can offer the highest if you can offer 1 terabytes of storage. I think at least the starting point should be reasonable, unless you're offering expandable storage here, but that's not the case for all Apple smartphones, right? They lock you up so that you're stuck with it, so that you'll be you buy the cheapest one, like this one, the lowest end, the lowest spec, and then if you're not happy, you'll sell it, then buy another one with more storage, which is limit your choice. Obviously the prices jump significantly, but anyway, let's take a closer look here. Now, according to the article, it mentions that a new baseline is needed. As I mentioned, I would think that 128 should be the starting point, or maybe 256. So if you're going to offer three variants, it should be 256 gigabytes, 512, and 1 terabyte. Now, if it's going to be more expensive, I think people are willing to shell out so that they can have that peace of mind. Even my case, that I'm going to do a review sometime in the future regarding portable SSDs here. I there was an offering for 512 gigabytes of storage, and then they have 1 terabyte, and I chose the 2 terabyte. Now, is it worth the money for spending the 2 terabytes? Of course not, but for my case, I want to have that buffer so that if I were to need that extra space, I have that ability now. Obviously, you're going to pay an extra penny for that convenience, so to speak. But anyway, so going back to the article here. So it mentions here that Apple upgraded the base storage of its iPhone 13 to 120, which is, I think, the most practical sense that they could have done. And then, well, they seem to have forgotten about it. And when offering the new iPhone SE with an M1 powered iPad Air and only kept the 64 storage, and it's just like comparing to a floppy disk, comparing that to a USB storage from megabytes to gigabytes of storage. So it's miles apart, and obviously we expect more from a big multi-billion company like Apple, that they offer the best, right? They're saying they're offering the best experience, but offering this base model at 64 gigabyte is never enough. And obviously they understand what consumer needs and consumer wants. And if they want people not downloading apps, softwares, I don't know, Netflix or games and whatnots, that eats up a lot of storage quickly. And obviously the according to the article here, which was posted by Ryan Haynes, stated it's just not good enough anymore, which I tend to agree, because obviously if you're offering something superior, like in the vehicle that we were discussing earlier, obviously more horsepower is always better, but the minimum base horsepower of a vehicle should be what the minimum standard is, whether it's 100 horsepower, 150, 200, or even more. And you cannot just offer something just for the sake of discussion, that you're offering something affordable, but no one would actually buy that vehicle because of its limited power, raw power, so to speak here. Anyway, it mentions here the iPhone SE is unique among Apple's ecosystem. Now, even though it's smaller and more affordable, and has familiar, validated design, it has now become less appealing. Obviously, that's why I get confused as to what's Apple's intention here. Apple is pegging itself as a premium product, right? That it charges a high amount of money, but it's trying to follow the model of Samsung here. So it's kind of confusing. If you're going to offer a budget product, a budgeted phone, then offer what features that you have in your high end, and so that it makes a compelling case for people who can afford the expensive or high end model. Then make it compelling here. Now, obviously, the features, you're not expecting a lot, but you need at least the bare minimum that people can live with, something to that effect. And the storage is a key component here. And a good example is the comparison that the article goes on to say here. So if you notice here, a Google Pixel 5a, which I haven't owned, to be honest, costs around $450. So around 25,000 pesos, which is a bit more expensive compared to the iPhone SE, but it offers a base storage of 128. So compare that to the iPhone here, it offers already a significant better proposition than what Apple is offering here. And if they were just to offer to bump it to 128 gigs, and it makes a compelling case for Apple users to, if they're looking to buy a secondary phone, or maybe buy a phone for the kids, then it makes sense. And then let's see. Yes. So you have the base model for the Pixel 6, which costs $20 more, and you also have Google's flagship around $600, but you get premium features here. You have the 5-inch display, and so forth. So obviously, the Android's counterpart for Apple has a better offering compared to what Apple is showcasing here, which is kind of baffling if you think about it. I mean, I have nothing against about what Apple is offering. They have tremendous product offerings here, but with AirTags that they're offering, and then now that what do you call this? The base model, which is obviously an intentional decision, so that customers will choose the more expensive, higher end model, which that's not the case here. That everyone should have a chance to offer reasonable, high valued products here. Anyway, so do you agree with what Apple is offering here? Because obviously they could always do more. I mean, it's a conscious decision that what they're offering here, which I tend not to disagree. And obviously, Tim Cook has a big say on this one. Now, obviously, their goal is to sell as many units as they can, at any cost. And obviously, the more expensive is more appealing to many companies, and in this case, at Apple's case, at that. So anyway, you may not agree, but it is what it is. But if companies like Apple takes advantage of their popularity and offering little value, well, that's where I speak up and you know think of what other companies is offering. That's why competition is always important, so that you can always compare and show to the other side of the company that you can always do better, and not just focus on the generating the money. Because if the customer or the consumer is pissed off, they can always jump ship to another ecosystem here, which obviously what Apple is leveraging, betting that they're not going to do anytime soon here. Anyway, next we have here, what would think that the pandemic, 2 years has passed, that we're considering how the travel industry, the airlines has been affected significantly. And what would think that with business reopening, gradually going back to the new normal of sorts. Well, sad to say, a South African company or airline, Comair, their entire fleet has been grounded indefinitely. Now, what would cause that rationale? Is it because of the pandemic, or is it totally different altogether here? So let's take a closer look here. So in Cape Town, South Africa civil aviation regulator grounded Comair's plane indefinitely over unresolved safety issues. So it's nothing that got to do with the pandemic, but it's more on the internal issues here. And obviously, if you have a unsafe airplane, which is obviously the one of the primary requirements for you to get passengers to ride your plane, is it has to have this impression and understanding that it's at its safest possible. And obviously you want to minimize any trouble that can happen, because no one wants a plane crashing just because of faulty wires or negligence of maintenance here. Now, the airline here is a low cost airline. uh, According to the spokesperson of South African Civil Aviation, or SACA, it has extended a 24-hour precautionary suspension of Comair's operational certificate indefinitely. It was supposed to end back in Sunday, but Comair has not adequately addressed of the necessary issues. So maybe the issue here is even bigger than what it is has been mentioned here. Now, according to SACA spokesperson Pindiwi Guibu, sorry. This morning, we communicated to Comair that the air operator certificate is now indefinitely suspended until they close all of the findings here. So, meaning effectively grounding the entire fleet of Boeing aircrafts here, which is kind of sad. Obviously, this is going to hamper all of the employees, especially the pilots, the stewardess, the flight crew, all of those people. Uh, According to Comair, it was unable to confirm when it would start flying again, obviously, until they resolve those issues. Now, after working through the night to provide documentations to SACA following a review of certain policies, systems, and procedures. Now, according to the chief executive, Glenn Orsmond, he mentions that this is a huge blow to our customers, employees, and flying public, as it effectively takes 40% of the capacity out of the market. The question is, whose fault is this? Was this a symptomatic problem that has been festering for quite some time, and the company neglected it, and then SACA caught on, and obviously they had to do their part. Otherwise, if maintenance is not that important, if something were to break down and obviously up in the air, if anything were to happen and the pilot could not land the plane safely, then disastrous things could happen, which obviously governments, institutions wants to avoid altogether here. Now, obviously, that would have a significant implications with regards to the South African nation, obviously offering affordable flights for the public here. So, question is, what will happen to the company here if they don't get this fixed quickly? And obviously, fixing the problem goes way beyond. If it's not just one airplane that has an issue, if it's a multitude of airplanes, that's going to take some time. But regardless, obviously as a company, you need to find the quickest way solution. It's not just a stopgap. Otherwise, if you just plug the hole, so to speak, and not fix the hole, then it would come and bite you in terms of a disaster looming in the future. Hopefully they can get it fixed, hopefully, rather than passing the buck and just being irresponsible, which is hopefully they're not doing right now here. Anyway, next is we're going now into gaming. For those who are into gamings, this year the recent launch of the Elden Ring has become one of the best-selling games in 2022 in the United States. Now, one would be surprised. Now it's been only in release less than a month, so that's how popular the game has been. Now, obviously, it has received some backlash from other devs stating that, I don't know if it's just sour graping, that compared to their game, it's not any better. And obviously, for the open world genre or roguelike Souls game, obviously, you can only do so much with the game. And obviously, offering new innovating new concepts, new gameplay, new style for gamers, for RPG type of game, you have to offer something unique. And I think Elden Ring has hit the spot in terms of its public consumption and demand here. And I think it's at the top of the charts in terms of Steam sales as well. In terms of concurrent users, I think almost 1 million users are playing the game right now. So let's take a closer look. Here at videogameschronicle.com, it's been the best-selling games already of 2022 with less than a month, as I mentioned here. So it's become a blockbuster here. I've seen trailers here. I haven't played it. Obviously, it's going to eat up a lot of your time if you started playing this type of games. Actually, I have other RPG types games from Horizon. I haven't finished. Skyrim, I haven't finished. And there's a lot of RPGs that I wish I could play, even Final Fantasy. So, it eats a lot of time. So if you have the free time, you can enjoy the game here. But anyway, so it's from Software, the publisher, which only was released way back in February 25th. So it's, less than a month, as I mentioned. So it debuted as the best-selling title of the month, as well as 2022 of year to date. So based on rank on dollars here. So obviously, it's a very popular game. Obviously, the single player experience is still that popular, no matter what EA or other companies that's focusing on multiplayer. Now, obviously, multiplayer, there's a market for that one, but it's not shifting anytime soon. There's always a variety of offerings of game is always tremendous here, as we can see moving forward here. And I think with the recent launch of Sifu also, which I've played already, just goes to show that different types of game, tremendous games, people will always buy it, no matter what genre it is here. Anyway, so let's take a closer look. So the game's month sales were only bettered by the one other game released last year, which was Call of Duty Vanguard. Now that's launched already more than, I don't know, less than 6 months ago. Now Elden Ring appears to set to be the From Software most successful game. So meaning the time that they developed the game has bear to fruition here. So hopefully they can capitalize on this, on the popularity, and if they're going to create another version of this Elden Ring 2, they already have the secret formula here on what made it popular in the first place here. Its UK release was the biggest launch for the game, other than FIFA, which is kind of sad. I like soccer, but what EA is offering in terms of marginal improvement of the game, people still buy the game. And don't get me started with regards to the loot boxes that they're offering here. And obviously the never-ending Call of Duty series is still popular to many multiplayer games here. And what's interesting here, it's Steam's 6th biggest game ever in terms of concurrent players, with peak of over 950,000, so almost 1 million. So that's 7 times more than Dark Souls. Not to say that Dark Souls is not a tremendous game. So meaning that's just how popular the game has become, which is, congratulations to the developing team, to the company for creating such a tremendous game. That's why, creating a great game takes many years. Hopefully, Bethesda doesn't do a repeat of this with their next iteration of Fallout, and we're still hoping that Skyrim 6 will be a tremendous game and they don't, try to do a disservice to their gaming community, similar to how CD Projekt Red has built their reputation with, The Witcher 3, and then, the debacle that has happened with, Cyberpunk 2077 here. It mentions here, while Elden Ring was February's top-selling game on Steam as well as Xbox platform in the US, it placed second to Horizon Forbidden West on PlayStation consoles here. So meaning, it's that popular in terms of multi-platforms here. So if we were to take a closer look, so let me show you here. So in terms of February sales as of 2022, as you can see here, that Elden Ring, a new game, is number one. And then not far behind is Horizon 2 Forbidden West, which, I haven't played, but, I like the graphics that they're offering here. You also have Dying Light 2, which was launched by Square Enix. It's the number 4. You have a new game, Warhammer 3, produced by Sega here. It's kind of sad. You see number 7. You have Madden 20 NFL 2022. So meaning, people are still supporting the game even though it's a hogwash of a copy and paste type of game. And and you also have FIFA 22, if you notice here, both owned by EA, which is kind of sad. But what's interesting here, many of the top games here you may notice is owned or produced by Nintendo. Here you have Pokemon Legends at number 3. You also have Mario Kart 8, at number 8. You have 12 to 14. You have Super Mario Party. You Super Mario Superstars, actually. Animal Crossing, still very popular. You have Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And you have Pokemon Brilliant Diamond at number 18. And at 20, The Legend of Zelda. So even several years later, is still one of the top, in the top 20 most popular games of all time. So you can just see the popularity of game is ever expanding. If it's a tremendous game, it's going to continue to get a lot of users who maybe haven't bought the game at its current launch, which I tends to do, and then eventually maybe later, if you have time, or you're looking at some reviews and you see a potential game, then you consider picking up the game later, or even play it at multiple consoles, not just in PlayStation or Xbox, maybe in your PC or even in your Nintendo Switch, or even eventually your Steam Deck here. So it's kudos to the gaming community offering tremendous game here. And if they're going to offer great games, I'm all for it. But if publishers are going to produce terrible games, which is something I'm not for it. But anyway, before I go on to another long rant here. But anyway, so for our final story here. So here in our city, in our country in particular, the pandemic is still ongoing, but with the increase of vaccination rates from our population is helping tremendously to have that herd immunity, so that even if you do test positive, you won't have the severe scenario or reaction that happened during the peak of the pandemic, which can be disastrous, cause fatalities here. So according to the MMDA, they're considering or proposing restriction-free or alert level 0. Now, is it too soon? When's the right time? What should be the indicator that would tell them or tell us, or we should know that it's a good time to transition now? It's safer, or is it just a miscalculation here, or are we jumping to conclusions quickly here? But anyway, so according to the article here at philstar.com, it mentions that the Metro Manila mayors are open to proposing the restriction-free alert level 0. So obviously that's a big decision that many decision makers cannot take it for granted, especially with the upcoming summer. You have the Holy Week, you have the election coming up. So if people have this false sense of security and are not careful, I think there should be some, I would say, restrictions, but there should still be guidelines that people maybe in public places still wear masks, but you can, roam around freely, or if you're in private gatherings or of such, whatever the protocols here, and it has to be sound and practical here, depending on the data and what's a threshold that we're looking for. If it reaches a certain level of an accurate data that we have, then you can say that I think we could shift now to level 0. If it reaches a certain increases to a certain level, then we should move back to level 1 or 2 or even 3. There should be some strict guidelines that we should have. Anyway, let's read on the article further. So the government has yet to reach a consensus on whether the country is ready to shift to alert level 0, which would essentially do away with restrictions under the government's alert system. So although some officials are wary of the proposal, even I would be worried. I mean, even if they were to say there's 0 level or alert level 0, but why would I still, looking at people, especially in movies or in videos or in other countries that doesn't wear any mask, it looks kind of weird now. I mean, 2 years from the pandemic, that people should still be conscious. If you're not feeling well, if you're coughing, be mindful, wear the mask. If you have kids or if you're in public places, so that to avoid any discomfort or uneasiness, so to speak, right? So obviously it should be an option for individuals whether they should wear mask or not, but it shouldn't be mandated if it's level 0, right? Anyway, in an interview over DCBB, Super Radio, or Super Radio, Super Radio, MMDA General Manager Frisco San Juan Jr. said that the National Capital Region's local chief executives were in favor of the move. Now, obviously, this would favor tremendously for businesses, so that they can get back to the normal business operations that they were accustomed pre-pandemic here. And obviously, there's a lot of catching up that business has to do. And as you can see, there's still, throughout our discussion here from the automotive industry, it's still being felt with the chip shortage and so forth here. Anyway, it mentions that they admitted that complacency and vaccine hesitancy are becoming a problem in the capital region. Now, obviously, there should be a target number in terms of the herd immunity. If it's 50, 60, or even 70, or even 80% of the population that's been vaccinated, then you can completely say that I think you can safely transition to alert level 0. But until we have that numbers up to that point, then we should stay at level 1. I mean, it's not that bad, but it's better to be cautious rather than, take it for granted, because the worst thing is if it were to spike up, we don't want to have that same experience that we went through that ordeal 2 years ago here. Now, the issue is there are some who do not get vaccinated because they think because the cases are low, it's no longer necessary. Now, again, that's another false sense of assumption here. And we've discussed this in our last discussion in Business Update with regards to athletes not getting vaccinated, sends a strong mixed signal with the public that maybe we shouldn't get vaccinated, because if we are not, then maybe the rest shouldn't follow suit, which is kind of counterintuitive, because you have a bigger responsibility now that you're in a high profile situation. And especially for the government, they have to carefully consider the threshold. What's the level that we're looking for before we can safely say that it's safe to shift to alert level 0 here. And obviously it has to be a collaboration with other cities here before they can even make a decision here, or maybe even the president can make a decision for that part. You have Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, Joy Concepcion, said that such a shift would push local governments to accelerate vaccination to allow localities to qualify for less stringent measures. I think that would make sense, right? Because if you incentivizes individuals, businesses, that if your employees are vaccinated, it makes it easier to lessen the restrictions, which would benefit the business tremendously. Less. Imagine before there were lots of checkpoints, and it creates a lot of bottlenecks, traffics. It doesn't benefit many of us here, especially for businesses here. Now, according to the Department of Health, or DOH, has been saying that vaccination has slowed down because people have become complacent. So again, it's up to the government to push, to encourage citizens to get vaccinated and make it easier, so that it's just like going to the store. Maybe for people who have cars, maybe have open parking, so that they can just do a drive-through of sorts. obviously the government has to do a lot of work here to be able to reach that, necessary threshold, because before, other industries can say that, it's safe, or for the mayors to say that it's safe to lift all restrictions for everyone here. And vaccination has been hampered by the vaccine hesitancy, so obviously awareness is important here. So obviously the government has to look for people who is willing to support and endorse the the vaccination process here. And obviously, especially in election period, I think it should be, they should take this advantage that they're for vaccination rather than say nothing about it, of that sort. Anyway, hopefully for me, anything that benefits our businesses, our economy, I'm all for it. But obviously we have to be cautious in our decision to making that. Now, it was mentioned here in the article, is face mask optional? Now, according to Conception, he mentioned that wearing face mask will no longer be necessary for outdoor situation, except when physical distancing is not possible, similar to the situation in political rallies. Now, again, I think it should be a case to case basis. Personally, I'd rather wear the mask, even though it's uncomfortable, especially in humid places. I tend to perspire more than usual. But again, it should be an option now, and it shouldn't be a requirement. And but it would be different now if you think about it, that when you meet people face to face and not wearing a mask, you think, would you, is the person you're talking to a carrier? Because you don't know if they're symptomatic, or even as, which is worse, if they're asymptomatic, they don't even know that they're carriers already. But that's the risk that we have. That's why getting vaccinated is, somewhere a median for not getting vaccinated, having maximum risk, but getting vaccinated minimizes the risk also, but it doesn't totally eliminate the risk. But at least, even if you get tested positive, the situation doesn't reaches at its, dangerous point, so to speak, here. And obviously, many businesses are in a hurry to shift to level zero so that they could, go back to some normalcy. But here's the key question. We've seen surges in other areas, in other regions, especially in our neighboring countries here. So you have seen unexpected surges. So let me show here. So you have seen unexpected surges in Hong Kong, South Korea, and Southeast Asian countries. So again, so we're not at their level that they are able to control those risk, mitigate the risk, and the fact that their cases are increasing. Especially for our big nation here, we have several islands here in the Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao region. So we have to be cautious here. It should be a case-to-case basis. So obviously, certain areas are easily managed, but for big cities like here at Manila, Metro Manila, you have Cebu and even Davao, can it be easily managed here? If not, then maybe we should have some minimal restrictions so that we don't get too complacent here, and we don't want a repeat of what happened 2 years back here. Anyway, what do you think? Hopefully, things will get better, not get worse. Hopefully, the worst has passed us, and so forth. Anyway, I think that's about it. Anyway, all of our topics are provided in our link in the description below if you want to check it out. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. As always, I'll see you again next week, same time, same channel. Take care.